Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to my studio. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to be talking with you about art supplies. But more specifically, these are going to be art supplies that you should absolutely, positively, without question, not get. So stick around and let's talk about them. Alright guys, here it is. This is the top 5 art supplies that you don't want to get. And some of these are going to be specific to oil painting, but some of them will be pretty generic, pretty broad for basically anybody. So let's start with number 5, and that is, and I hope that this one goes without saying, but I'm going to mention it anyway, and that is any paint thinner or solvent, mineral spirit, whatever, that you get at a hardware store. Guys, this is not meant for oil painting. This is not meant for oil painters, fine artists in working in an enclosed studio space. This stuff is meant for oil-based paints, yes, but the type that you use when you're painting your house, working outside. Because this stuff is so disgusting, it's so hazardous. I think the aroma alone is enough to put you in a coma. I don't know, but it's pretty bad. So if it looks anything like this, don't get it. This stuff that comes from the hardware store, it's not meant for studio fine artists. What you do want to get if you're going to use solvents is something that is designed for artists, and probably the best option that you have is this stuff right here. This is called Gamsol, made by Gamblin Artist Colors, and it basically it takes all of that hazardous, disgusting stuff out of the equation and makes it safe for studio use. Now, don't mistake, this stuff is still kind of harmful if it's the vapors and whatnot. You still want to keep it in an enclosed container, with an airtight container with a lid on it, until you're ready to use it. But otherwise, it's perfectly safe to use in your studio. So number 4 is any paint that comes in tubes that look like this. Just these kind of no-name brand, cheap, generic paints that you can get that usually come in a set. Actually, this came in a set that came with a tabletop easel that I bought years ago. These are watercolors, but this easel came with a set of watercolors, a set of acrylics, and a set of oils. And all the tubes are basically like this. They are these very generic, non-brand type of paints, and as you can imagine, the quality of them is not going to be very good. There is a difference between cheap and affordable, and what you want to go with is something that is affordable, something that works within your budget, but is also a good quality. And one good quality oil paint brand that I would recommend is Utrecht. This is a brand that I've used before, and it's pretty affordable. It's got a great price tag on it, but it's also a good quality artist grade oil paint. The pigment quality is good. The pigment to oil ratio is pretty solid. So and I mean, it's affordable. It's a good brand to start off with if you are starting off with oils. Or even if you're not starting off with oils, if you're an oil painter and you want to use a good quality oil paint brand, go with Utrecht. I think it's a pretty good one. It's not my go-to, but it's definitely worth the price tag for sure. It's actually worth more than the price tag. So I would say go with it. Again, you want to go for something that's going to work within your budget, but is also a good quality, and that is certainly a brand that I would recommend. Okay, so number 3, this basically is about framing, and it's certain types of framing hardware that you want to avoid. Now, probably the number one thing that you want to avoid when it comes to framing are these guys right here. These are called sawtooth hangers. and I'm pretty sure that sawtooth hangers are universally rejected by all galleries and art shows that you will encounter. Um, I don't know what it is about these things and why so many people hate them so much, but you, whatever. I mean, don't use them. You don't want to use these. They're kind of I don't know. They're just unprofessional. Let's just put it that way. They're unprofessional. They're not a good quality way of framing your paintings, or attaching hanging hardware to your frames. And you just don't bother with them. I'm actually, don't even look at them. I'm actually kind of ashamed that I have them in my studio, but I have to show you what they are and what to avoid. What you do want to get is framing wire, hanging wire for your frames, and there are certain types of hardware that you get that you attach the framing wire to. But even some of this stuff is something that you want to avoid. And an example of that would be these guys right here. These are called screw eyes. And the reason they're called that is because you got the eye, this little loop right here where you attach the framing wire. You loop the framing wire into it, and it screws basically directly into the frame. And the reason that these are so bad, and the reason you don't want to use these, is because after, with time, basically, these screw eyes will start to loosen up, probably with the weight of the frame kind of putting tension on this, and it'll start to loosen up, and it'll tear the back of your frame up, basically. And another reason you want to avoid these is because this loop right here basically protrudes from the back of your frame, and when you rest it up against the wall, it digs right into the wall, and you don't want that either. You don't want that for your wall. You don't want this going on with your frame. And so what you do want to get are these guys right here. These are called ring hangers, and also sometimes called D-ring hangers. But basically, these attach. You just screw them in through these holes on the back of your frame, and you attach the framing wire to these loops. And it is the most secure and stable option that there is. And so if you need a little bit of instruction or tutorial on how to frame your paintings, I do have a video in which I show you how to do that, and I will link that down in the description below. And it shows you everything, how to attach the hardware and how to secure your painting in the frame. And so check that out if you want. Okay, so number 2 is anything that you can make yourself, that you can easily make yourself. Don't go to an art supply store and buy this stuff if it's something that you can make, if it's something that you can create a makeshift version of. And so one example of that I have right here is my maul stick. And basically what a maul stick is, if you don't know, it's something that you rest up against your easel when you're painting, and that way you have this little rod, this little stick that you can rest your hand on, and work on small details of your painting without actually putting your hand on the painting itself. And so these come in pretty handy, especially if you're working with larger paintings. But even if you have a smaller painting that you can't, that you can't really maneuver your hand around and avoid putting your hand or your fingers on the painting itself, a maul stick definitely comes in handy. But this is definitely an example of something that you can easily make yourself with materials that you may already have at home. I just made this with a dowel rod that I had already, a scrap piece of canvas, and I'm not sure what I stuffed it with, probably some cotton or batting or something, but something that you can just make a kind of a grip for at the end, and some duct tape and hemp string, and that's it. And you're not going to believe this, but it costs over $30 for this thing. And all it is literally is a stick with a piece of leather attached to the end, and that's it. Now, the rod is extendable, and so you can extend it to different lengths, which you can't do with this thing, but I really don't even need to. Yet another thing I will mention is stuff that you can get cheaper somewhere else. There are a lot of things, a lot of generic things that you can get at the art supply store that you can get cheaper elsewhere. And an example of that would be like masking tape. You can get at the hardware store or Walmart or something like that. I don't know what it is, why masking tape costs so much at an art supply store, but it does, and it's freaking hilarious. Okay, so the number one thing that I will say that you want to avoid getting, the number one art supply that you want to avoid getting is what I would refer to as a novelty art supply. And basically what I mean by that, things that look kind of fun that you might use once or twice, but then you'll never use it again. And an example of this that I thought of is if you can see behind me, this little chart here of colors. This is actually all of the colors that are available through Williamsburg oil colors, which is the brand that I use typically. And as you can see, there's quite a selection, and there's a lot of fun looking colors that that I would might be tempted to get, but when I think about it and do the intelligent thing, it would be not to get these things, because I know that they're not going to be colors that I would use on a regular basis, and I would probably use it maybe once or twice and then never use it again and just end up collecting dust, and that's a waste of money. Really a lot of this comes down to not wasting your money, but also just using some common sense and thinking about what are the best materials for your studio and for the type of work that you create. So yeah, that's an example of a novelty. Like I think about the iridescent colors, or the metallic things like the copper and gold and silver. I don't know, maybe those look kind of fun, but I'm never going to use them, and so why buy them? So anyway, that's my list. If you guys have any other examples based on, well, your own experience, or just other examples that you can think of art supplies that you should not buy, go ahead and put those in the comments section down below. I'd be interested to hear what art supplies you would not recommend getting. So with that, thanks so much for watching, and I do plan on coming back with a top 5 list of art supplies that you should get. So be looking out for that. But till then, take care of yourselves. God bless you, and happy painting.